Ladies and gentlemen, RosterWatch Nation, welcome back to the epic RosterWatch Podcast, brought to you by RosterWatch.com. My name is Alex Dunlap, here with Byron Lambert. Finally back on the YouTube and Periscope. You guys let us know in the chat whether or not you can hear us. Hopefully we're not having any audio issues today. For everybody listening on the podcast, or if this is your first time checking us out on YouTube, please subscribe to the RosterWatch Podcast and Apple Podcasts. We would greatly appreciate it. You can find all of our content at RosterWatch.com. With that being said, Byron, big episode today. The top 5 unveiling of your personal running back rankings. They won't be our official RosterWatch kind of team cumulative rankings because Trashman and I will get ours in, and we will have that soon. I think probably next week. We'll get it up the week before the draft. So we're getting close, but Byron is unveiling his running back rankings right here on the podcast. We went through numbers 15 through number 6 last time. Byron, do you want to recap those before we get into the top 5?
Sure. In the last episode, in my top 15 rookie running back rankings, this is pre-draft for the 2020 NFL draft class. At number 15, we had the redshirt senior LaMichael Pirine from the University of Florida. At number 14, we had the senior James Robinson out of Illinois State. At number 13, we had the junior out of Boston College, A.J. Dillon. At number 12, we had the redshirt sophomore out of Maryland, Alex, Anthony McFarland. I'm not sure if you've gotten around to watching any of the videos I've been sending over to you, but boy, man, he's starting to a little bit of hype is starting to permeate in the fantasy draft ethos right now.
Do you have Darrington Evans ranked above him? I forgot. I think you do, right?
One above him, but I mean, I'm not sure I should.
Yeah, I like McFarland. I'm not sure I should.
It was really close. I mean, McFarland. I was touting last week. Everybody needs to get their eyes on him. That's a very, very exciting player, and he's not just fast, man. That dude sheds contact. He has great feet.
Was it Chris
get a lot of volume
you were
Maryland.
talking to who had him in his top 3 or whatever of the class? Chris Trabasso from CBS.
Indeed, it was. I mean,
top 3. That's high.
Well, that's his neck of the woods up there. You know, he lives up in that area of the country, and trust me, if you've seen a lot of Anthony McFarland, it's pretty difficult not to have some interest there. So a player that is rising across draft boards industry-wide right now. At number 12, Alex, you mentioned it. I'm sorry, at number 11, Alex, you mentioned it. Redshirt junior out of Appalachian State. That was Darrington Evans, another player that peeled off a big 40 time at the Combine and has a little hive there on Twitter and in the NFL draft world himself. At number 10, we had Zach Moss, the senior out of Utah. At number 9, we had the junior out of Arizona State, Eno Benjamin. At number 8, in my rookie running back rankings, I have the senior out of Memphis, the Weapon X, Antonio Gibson, kind of the player that I dubbed as one of the most special players in this class. It'd be very interesting to see if the NFL does the right thing and how they handle that player as he comes along early in his NFL career. At number 7, I had our RB1 from the Senior Bowl, Alex. That's redshirt senior out of UCLA, Joshua Kelly. And then at number 6, a source of maybe a mild bit of controversy, a player I certainly really like and a player I was very, very high on coming out of the NFL Combine. The junior out of Florida State was Cam Akers. So that was my top 15 through 6 that we revealed in the last episode, and ready to get on here.
I can tell you by deductive reasoning. I know who your top 5 are. I don't know the order. There is one in there that's going to be a surprise to everybody, but I'm finding out the order the same as everybody else here that's watching this live, or who's going to hear it here on the podcast as soon as we get it published and up. So excited to hear it, man. You just want to get started? I don't think we have any sort of drum roll effects we could put in live. Maybe I could do some of that in post. Let's just go ahead and get into it.
Yeah, let's hit it. As I stated on the last episode, Alex, there's a clear-cut number 1 in this class that definitely stands out above the rest. But there was
You're not
also
going to tell us the one, are you? You're not going to tell us the one.
Also
let's do that last.
There was also a particular prospect in this class that represents the bridge from the middle class to the upper class, or the upper crust, as you called it in the last episode of this year's running back group. And, a lot of arguments, a lot of folks would make the strong argument that player in this class, that bridge player, is Cam Akers, who I just mentioned came in at my RB6. And like I said, I do like an awful lot. But for me, there's another player I'm going to make the case for as the bridge player in this class, a player that reminds me very much of Kerryon Johnson. If you remember, Alex, what a difficult and polarizing evaluation Kerryon Johnson was at the time, but I know you remember the trash man's love for him, and I think we found out in general, when healthy, he's just turned out to be an overall good and exciting player.
I wish the Lions knew. I wish the Lions knew that. Such donks, dude.
All right, so for me, coming in at number 5 in my top 5, Alex, we got we got the red shirt senior coming in at 5'10", 214 pounds. 8 7/8 inch hands, ran a 4.51 40 at the combine, and jumped 32 inches in the vertical and 117 inches in the broad. That is the redshirt senior out of Vanderbilt, Ke'Shawn Vaughn. Alex, I wasn't going to hold out on you too long here. And when it comes to Ke'Shawn Vaughn, this is a player that played 46 games over the last 4 seasons. He played a lot at Vanderbilt, but he wasn't, quote unquote, overused from an NFL perspective. He's a guy who was a transfer from Illinois to Vanderbilt. Almost 19 touches per game last year in 2019, 18.9 touches per game to be exact for Ke'Shawn Vaughn last year. But he'd been more of that 15 touch per game guy over his career before that, much like a Kerryon Johnson, registering an impressive 5.8 yards per carry over his career, and went over for 1,300 yards as a player the last 2 seasons. So when it came to Ke'Shawn Vaughn, I saw a good receiver on film that maybe didn't have quite as many receptions as you would have expected in his college production. Once again, very similar to Kerryon Johnson. He did have 28 receptions last year at Vanderbilt, which certainly is evidence that he can catch the ball well enough. But Alex, when it comes to Ke'Shawn Vaughn, what I saw is just an excellent, pure, natural running back. He has great position-specific skills. He's a player who was born to be a running back. With Ke'Shawn Vaughn, you see good feet, good burst, good vision, good hands. He's got good enough speed. He's elusive. He's got very good contact balance. And for a player his size, he's demonstrably a finisher. Now, I know one of the concerns with Ke'Shawn Vaughn will be his breakout age of almost 23 years old when the draft expires here in a couple of weeks. But he was also a player that had the second highest college dominator score per our good friend Matt Kelly over at Player Profile. And that was second only to Jonathan Taylor in this class. And so while Ke'Shawn Vaughn may not have the prototype workhorse size and build, he has good size and build. And while the speed isn't elite, it's good at 4.51. The lateral agility and the burst maybe aren't elite and violent like some of the very best we've seen. But overall, Alex, Ke'Shawn Vaughn is a very, very elusive guy on tape. And we got a glimpse of it for just a little while at the Senior Bowl on day 1 of practice before he was, pulled out for a quote-unquote injury. But, he looked good, and I'm pretty confident to say that Ke'Shawn Vaughn would have almost certainly been in the mix for RB1 in Mobile had he completed an entire week of practice there. And, like I said, as a prospect, he reminds me very much of Trashman's love for Kerryon Johnson a few years ago. And, I'm not the only one. Draft guru and NFL insider Gil Brandt recently tweeting out that basically the general public is sleeping on Ke'Shawn Vaughn when it comes to how the NFL is evaluating him, and that he's got a lot of Tony Pollard to him, which is certainly not another comp that I don't mind that comp at all. I like that comp, Alex. So really, when it came to Ke'Shawn Vaughn,
I just put up the clip of one rep from the Senior Bowl where he looks like a good receiver, but I don't think we saw Tony Pollard was just such a. I guess you didn't even
remember Tony Pollard at the Senior Bowl.
No,
I had to remind you a year later that he even played there.
Tony Pollard's college fucking tape, dude. Come on. It's like Ke'Shawn Vaughn doesn't show out as the receiver that Tony Pollard did.
Well, I mentioned that you'd like to see more, but he's a guy I think can definitely catch the football. We saw the 28 receptions last year. So basically, when it came to Ke'Shawn Vaughn, for me, Alex, he's pretty much got most of what you're looking for at the running back position, and a player I view as very, very slick.
He's a 35th percentile athlete. If you look, 28 receptions, it was 14% of that team's market share of total receptions on the season last year. He did score. Can you believe how bad Vanderbilt sucked last year? I mean, he had 10 total touchdowns and had 48% of the team touchdowns. That's just sad. That's hard to believe. Can that even be that Vanderbilt only had 20 offensive touchdowns last year?
I mean, they play in a difficult conference. I mean, that's the other thing we maybe don't talk about is the level of comp. You think of Vanderbilt as a small school, but this is a high level of competition.
Trashman doesn't think he's evasive. I didn't necessarily think his evasiveness was my real issue with Ke'Shawn Vaughn. My issue is just like he lacks explosion. His production also declined from his junior to his senior season. The things I did like about him, his frame, Byron mentioned, prototypical frame. I mean, I think that the evasive. Byron, you don't think he's evasive through? I mean, he's evasive because he's a powerful one cut and go runner,
he's got
right?
Great vision, good feet. He's elusive, man. He doesn't have crazy
he runs
lateral
well through contact.
But he's a very elusive player who, like you said,
he's
sheds.
patient with waiting for his blocks. He can
great
shed
instincts. Great instinct. The guy is a natural born. I mean, he really has tremendous position specific skills.
I have trouble.
4.51 is fast, man.
Yeah.
How much are you going to bang him for running 4.51?
I'm not. But I mean, if we're talking about guys we're going to give credit to, despite the fact that their offenses were bad or that they were in bad offensive situations, I won't have Ke'Shawn Vaughn ahead of Cam Akers. I think Cam Akers is just a better, more naturally elusive runner that has the same power, the same leg drive.
He's definitely not a more elusive runner than Ke'Shawn Vaughn, and that's not even close. And I would
look at the offensive line.
I would go to battle on. I would die on that hill any day. Now I like Cam Akers a lot,
and then if you
look, not elusive like Ke'Shawn Vaughn.
It's just
not at the second level. Not at the second level.
I can't believe you would say that when you look at whenever you could look at what Cam Akers can do to create on his own behind that horrible offensive line.
But not in the second level, Alex, and not in the open field. Cam Akers is not an elusive player once he gets in the second level. He's just not. He has the kind of elusive.
He has the kind of elusiveness that I value a lot more for that kind of banger of a runner, because once you get in the open field as a 4.51, running back, this type of guy, it's neither of these guys are going to be guys who are going to take the lid off. I care a lot more about elusiveness through the line of scrimmage and
Vaughn doesn't generate. Vaughn is so natural at picking the holes and following his blocks. He is elusive back there too. He just didn't have to show it off maybe as much because maybe some of those plays you're seeing where guys were getting so far in the backfield. I like Cam Akers, and I think you could argue he's more of a workhorse and he's more explosive. I just don't. I see a less elusive player. We could be splitting hairs, my number 5 and number 6 guys. But listen, Gil Brandt tells us that folks are sleeping on Ke'Shawn Vaughn, and he has a good bead on how the NFL views these guys. So I have no doubt
that we should always listen to everything that Gil Brandt says as far as what he's hearing. But look, I mean, it's just I'm probably gonna have Cam Akers at number 4, number 5. So it isn't like we're worlds apart. But I do feel like there's a drop off there at that spot. And if we're talking about the drop off, like you're saying that Ke'Shawn Vaughn's the bridge. I feel like you have to consider Cam Akers as part of that bridge too. It's like maybe the bridge goes to 6, but I don't.
There's a couple guys that could be in that category, and I think the guy at number 4 could also be in the bridge category. Alex, he's a player you see all over the place on various draft boards, and definitely could be considered one of the other bridge players from the middle class to the upper class in this year's crop. But the junior coming in at 5'7", 207 pounds, 9 5/8 inch hands, ran a 4.6 at the combine, pumped up 15 reps on the bench, and jumped out of the building a 39.5 inch vertical, and then a solid 123 inch broad. That's the junior out of LSU, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, coming in as my RB4 in the class.
He likes being called Helaire, Clyde
Edwards-Helaire.
I think that the H is like kind of Cajun and kind of Cajun and silent.
Man, I got to tell you, Ke'Shawn Vaughn, he's just a more natural running back than Cam Akers. As good as Cam Akers' individual skills are, as a whole, he is so much more of a natural running back. And
give me Akers.
I don't know what films you've been watching on Ke'Shawn Vaughn, but I would implore you to take a second run, Alex. I don't trust that the trash man did enough homework. 38 games played.
What do you equate me to that fucking trash man for? You don't think I do my own shit? Come on, dude.
I'm just saying you cited the trash man's perspective on this.
No, I said that I
put a big discount on that.
I defended you. I was saying I don't agree with trash man's take that that Ke'Shawn Vaughn is not elusive, because I think he's a powerful runner with terrific leg drive.
Let me ask you: were you low on Kerryon Johnson? As it turns out, I mean, forget the durability stuff. I had him as
RB4.
I'm not sure. I remember the trash man having him much higher than
I could put, but nonetheless, trash man had him at RB2. Like I could look back at my 2017. I could look back.
Another guy that was just polarizing. So it's not a surprising conversation to be had. But anyways, back to Clyde Edwards-Helaire. 38 games played at LSU. He barely played as a freshman. 28 games played over the last 2 seasons. That's exactly 14 games a season, and 18 and 19 for Edwards-Helaire on average, but it was 15 games that he played last year with the national championship. Good production in 2018, great production in 2019 on more volume. Obviously on a great team with Joe Burrow that was putting him in a position to create a lot of production there. It's not the full-blown college production profile you'd love to see out of Edwards-Helaire, but the 55 receptions last year and the steady upward trajectory of his workload with an increase in production and efficiency with volume over time in his career is very encouraging. I think you can make the strong argument when it comes to Edwards-Helaire that he actually has just the right amount of mileage left on the tires. It's the right amount of tread, that he was used just the perfect amount in college as NFL teams see it. And you got to think with Edwards-Helaire, obviously he's had plenty of seasoning on one of the very best teams in the country at the very highest level of college football competition. 5.7 yards per carry, including 6.6 yards per carry last year in 2019. And Edwards-Helaire was also just that dude that was the heartbeat of the team. Just a tough, gritty player who had a knack for making plays in the clutch, and he's nifty as hell. Edwards-Helaire, Alex, is a guy that quote unquote has it, which is very difficult to quantify in models and in rankings and evaluations, but it's hard to deny that. 1,867 yards and 17 touchdowns in the national championship season of 2019. It was 18 touches per game. And he got a lot of really traditional running back reps at LSU, which is something you don't see with a lot of these other guys who are taking the ball, almost exclusively out of shotgun, spread formations, et cetera. You got to see a lot more that actually translate directly to the NFL. And I know, people are a little down on the 4.6 at the combine, but as you reminded me in a post-combine podcast, Alex, I mean, he did jump almost 40 inches in the vertical. So this isn't a guy that's devoid of explosive ability. And when it came to my comps for Clyde Edwards-Helaire, I ultimately settled in on Ray Rice, Devin Singletary, with a bit of Devontae Freeman mixed in.
I think he's like a Michael Turner or a Darren Sproles. What do you think of those?
I think of Michael Turner as a bigger player. How much did Michael Turner weigh? He seemed like so stout, man.
He kind of just looked. He was so short, though. I think Ray Rice is fine. MJD, those guys are all kind of those players are all pretty similar. Michael Turner might have been a little bit bigger. He was just the first guy that popped into my head when I was watching Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Do you know what's funny, Byron, is he caught 55 balls last year. People talk about what a good receiver he is, but if you look at the context of their offense, Ke'Shawn Vaughn actually had 14% of his team's receptions compared to Clyde Edwards-Helaire that had 13% of his team's receptions. Crazy. Whenever we Joe Burrow was asked who the best player he's ever played with is. And remember, Joe Burrow, clearly he played at LSU, one of the greatest college football team ever. But before that, he was at Ohio State. And he was around a bunch of those Ohio State guys from these last 3 to 4 drafts. And he said, no question, Clyde's the best player that I've ever been around in my life. So he's an alpha. People love him. His teammates love him. Very productive player. And as Byron said, the 4.61, but still a 69th percentile athlete overall from his combine testing this year. Do you see him do you think Clyde Edwards-Helaire could be a 3-down back at the NFL level? Or is he
I think he's got the chance to do everything that Devin Singletary's just done. And if he's Ray Rice, that was a 3-down back. It might only be 15, 18 touches per game, but I mean, it's the epitome of a useful player in today's NFL. And forget about that. He's just a good player and a good running back, period. Coming out of a tremendous program. The junior profile, a lot of tread left on the tires. I think NFL teams are going to be smitten with Edwards-Helaire, and I expect him to contribute early, at least in some kind of, ancillary role with the ability to gain more touches in pretty short order. Like I said, similar to maybe what we saw out of Devin Singletary last year.
One more thing. The other knock you hear about Edwards-Helaire on Twitter and elsewhere is that he might be a product of the awesome system at LSU. It's the same thing we hear about all these guys, Burrow, except does that come into your mind at all in your evaluation?
Yeah, I mean, you weigh that a little bit, but you can also say he played at the highest level of competition. He contributed to a national championship team. I mean, it's, I think it's small. It's
sixes, right? I mean, it's 6 of one, half dozen. Yeah. Okay. I get it.
Right. I mean, there's just too many good players that come out of LSU. I mean, at some point you got to realize, like, the players that come out of LSU, those are damn good prospects. That carries some weight, right?
Boy, that was going to be an awesome pro day. It's going to be an awesome pro day.
Oh, it really was. It really was.
All right. Number 3. Now, this is so we all know who the top 3 are. Let's see what the order is. At least, unless you're really going to shock the shit out of me, but I feel I should.
To recap the conversation, at 6, I had Cam Akers, who we also consider, quote unquote, a bridge guy, with Ke'Shawn Vaughn, who I had at 5, and maybe also Edwards-Helaire, who I had at 4. So, in truth be told, that's kind of the group, in my opinion, that is the transition from the middle class to the upper class to this top 3 set of running backs, Alex. And so at number 3 coming in, we have a junior weighing in at 212 pounds with 9-inch hands. He ran a 4.48. He jumped 35.5 inches in the vertical and 121 inches in the broad. This is DeAndre Swift from Georgia. Some various respectable folks in the industry have Swift as RB1 in this class, an elusive player with 3-down capability, along with great instincts and a knack for making big plays. Swift has great feet and is more physical than you might expect at his stature, and obviously has the tremendous production profile coming out of a great program and a great conference as well. So 43 games played in 3 years for Swift, over 14 games per season on average, and an astounding 6.6 yards per carry at Georgia for DeAndre Swift. Over 1,300 total yards the last 2 seasons, but only a 12 touch per game career guy in Swift, Alex. That did bump up to 15.7 touches per game in 2019. In my opinion, he'd be an ideal fit somewhere like Kansas City. I mean, he'd be just a perfect fit in the way they like to do things over there. He can run the zone. He can run behind the man schemes. He can press the outside. He can cut it back. Swift can hit the toss plays, and he can take it up the middle. So overall, a very appealing player who has that elusive quality, 3-down capability, and a good enough athletic profile and physicality coming out of that big program at Georgia, Alex. I think DeAndre Swift truly has bona fide NFL viability.
What do you think about an Alvin Kamara comp?
My comps for DeAndre Swift for Kareem Hunt, Miles Sanders, and also a little bit of Devin Singletary.
You like comparing Singletary to all these good players. You must love Singletary.
Well, he's an elusive, smaller, stacked guy, right?
Yeah. I think that the Devin Singletary comp to Benjamin is my favorite I've seen so far this year. But I look, man, I look at him and I see a Kamara. I mean, he is one of the shiftiest dudes that you said the most elusive, one of the most kind of, cut on a dime, Shady McCoy type of players. This is a dude in open space. He's an absolute demon and a beast. Also, I mean, 60th percentile athlete. He's young. DeAndre Swift just turned 21 in January. So you're getting him in there young, on the right side of age. I mean, Jesus, 21. He just turned 21. So also, 1,434 yards last season and 8 touchdowns. I think that I'm interested to hear, can we just get to number 3? Because I'm interested in to number 2, because I'm interested in how you compare and contrast. Or it could be I don't even know who your number 1 is. Who can we move on to number 2 so I can ask my next question about Swift?
Coming in at number 2 in my 2020 pre-draft rookie running back rankings is the junior, coming in at 209 pounds with 9 4/8-inch hands, 23 reps on the bench. This is the player from Ohio State, J.K. Dobbins. Alex, an elusive player with explosive on-field burst, although we didn't get to see the measurables, the times in Indianapolis or at the
We have plenty of times from the opening. Dude, he's from down here in Bastrop, like just east of where I live. He's a very, very good athlete. I mean, it's we have the spark times from when he was, doing the opening and stuff like that. I'm not worried about what he would have run or what he would have jumped or what he would have done with any of this stuff. He's an explosive athlete, and if you can't tell by just looking at him on the football field, you're crazy. You're crazy. You just don't want to look at it.
Both very elusive players, but in my opinion, it was Dobbins who demonstrated more burst on tape than DeAndre Swift. A natural 3-down skill set for J.K. Dobbins with the ability to shed, and excellent position-specific skills coming out of the nation's, one of the nation's very, very best programs there at Ohio State. I mean, it's just an NFL factory, kind of what we said about LSU for Edwards-Helaire. You have to give that some stock with the prospects coming out of that place. 42 games played in 3 seasons for Dobbins at an average of 14 games played per season with an increased workload every single year. He began as a freshman at 15 touches per game, went over 1,500 total yards. Then he went to 18 touches per game in 2018, where he contributed 1,300 total yards. And then last year in 2019, you got an eye-popping 23 touches per game, where he demonstrating workhorse capability, even at that size and stature, for 2,250 total yards for Dobbins last season, 6.2 yards per carry career, just absolutely eye-popping. Only about 25 receptions a year. A little less than he cut 2 receptions per game, but overall, he can catch the football, and it's a great production profile for J.K. Dobbins on a steady upward trajectory where he showed he was viable from day one, and also that he could handle more touches, including big volume in 2019. And he's another player, Alex, I feel, that comes to the NFL with a good amount of tread left on the tires.
I think I'm with you, man. I'm having a lot of trouble between these two guys. Who do you think is more elusive in the open field between J.K. Dobbins and DeAndre Swift?
I had exact same score on those guys for that quality.
It's like I don't know what to. I don't. But it. Well, so what is it? So what is it that made you? What made you like Dobbins more than Swift? What areas did you find him more appealing than Swift from an attribute standpoint?
Well, he's a more explosive player. I mean, and look, I have similar grades on these guys, but Dobbins is a more explosive player on tape. We saw 23 touches per game last year, which Swift came nowhere close to that. I mean, like I said, Swift was 12.7 touches per game in his career, 15 and change last year. That's nowhere near putting up 23 touches a game at Ohio State. So I think he flashed maybe a little bit more capability to handle some volume there, Alex. And then I just, and part of this is tied to his explosive ability. I just saw a little bit more big playmaking ability out of Dobbins than Swift, but we're definitely splitting hairs when you're talking about that with either of those players.
Yeah, I agree, man. It's a tough decision between the two. It feels like Dobbins is the one. It feels like Dobbins is a little bit more explosive, whereas DeAndre Swift is a little bit more. It's hard to just a little bit more balanced, and a little bit more shifty, and a little bit more. Maybe they just have a different kind of elusiveness in the open field, and it's like that explosive elusiveness that J.K. Dobbins to me is a little bit more appealing than the super awesome still, man. DeAndre Swift, like. It's a tough hair to split, but I'm kind of thinking I'm going to be with you, and I'm going to have Dobbins over Swift. But that's the hardest decision in all of my running back rankings has been just going back and forth and watching those two guys and figuring out who I like better. And that's the reason why I asked you. I said I want to hear who your next guy is before I ask you this question about whether you had the same issues getting to your final that I've had. Whether is that your toughest decision?
I mean, it was close. It was close between those two, but it was clear enough that Dobbins came out number 2 in my rankings. I mean, the other one that would be really close is 4 through 6, Edwards-Helaire, Ke'Shawn Vaughn, and Cam Akers for me. I mean, those are the other guys that are pretty close, but I really didn't have any virtual ties this year like I've had in the past. Maybe that Antonio Gibson, Eno Benjamin were pretty close in my rankings, but I thought things shook out pretty clearly for me. I'll tell you, Alex, I did have a longer list of comps for J.K. Dobbins than I did for Swift. I had some similar, actually, they shared a few guys as common comparables as well, but Dobbins, I said Hunt, Singletary, and Miles Sanders for Swift. For J.K. Dobbins, I have Aaron Jones, Julius Jones, Tiki Barber, Austin Eckler, Miles Sanders, Ray Rice, MJD, Felix Jones, Thomas Jones, Frank Gore, and then the shitty end of the spectrum was Amir Abdullah. So a little bit maybe wider array of players there, but I think you get the picture. All those guys are mostly a little bit shorter guys with a good compact build that have quite a bit of juice. And nonetheless, J.K. Dobbins, DeAndre Swift, both extremely viable NFL running back prospects. And then that, of course, leaves us at number 1, Alex. And this is the junior who came in at 226 pounds with 9 4/8 inch hands, peeled off just a blazing and eye-popping 4.39 in the 40 at Indianapolis, pumped up 17 reps on the bench. Showed out respectively at that size with the 36-inch vertical, 123-inch broad. And then that 7.013 cone is a really nice time for a player that's 226 pounds at the running back position. The 20-yard shuttle at 4.24 was maybe a little less desirable, but not totally outside of the pocket. And who I'm referencing here at the clear-cut number 1 running back, the junior out of Wisconsin, Jonathan Taylor, Alex, he stands out well above the rest in this class. It's because he's a prototypical workhorse back in the mold of the league's very best running backs, with an explosive profile and an eye-popping size-speed combo with tremendous ability to shed and natural running back instincts. Taylor's capable of the big volume on all 3 downs that only so few players in the NFL can be relied on for. He does lack a bit of that extraordinary elusive quality of somebody like a Saquon Barkley, but there's just no other guys like that. He matches up very well with the rest. And by the rest, when I'm talking about Jonathan Taylor, I mean, he matches well with Todd Gurley. He matches well with Leonard Fournette, with Zeke Elliott, Melvin Gordon, and Nick Chubb. 41 games played in 3 seasons at Wisconsin at almost 14 games per year, 6.7 yards per carry for Jonathan Taylor, 55 touchdowns, over 18 touchdowns a year on 968 touches on an average of 322 touches per season for Jonathan Taylor at Wisconsin, which culminated in, a monster workload of 346 touches last year at almost 25 touches per game, including 26 touchdowns. So obviously there's a concern here with the amount of work that he's had just because of general shelf life of these workhorse running backs. I thought Taylor showed off the hands a little bit more last year with the 26 receptions. And we got to remember, he's still coming out with that beautiful junior profile. And you can argue that he's had 3.5, 4 years worth of touches on him during that time. But he still does come out after 3 years at Wisconsin, not totally just run into the ground over 4 years. And you look, Jonathan Taylor, maybe he's a one contract guy because of that volume. But look pretty healthy to me, Alex, running at 4.39, the two-time Doak Walker winner. I mean, he had an absolutely beastly 3-year career. And, maybe in some respects, he's the type of player we're going to prefer plays behind a good offensive line in the league, like maybe some of these other big backs that aren't quite as shifty and a little more downhill. But, the bottom line is Jonathan Taylor, he's one of those rare players and prospects, and not many others like him exist in the NFL.
All right, well, that's going to be the show. And I completely agree with Byron for everybody watching here on YouTube. One quick thing, we have this guy, Reed Bartz, who is asking on Twitter, rookie only draft today. I picked 101 and 106. I'm assuming this isn't super flex, so we'll just answer like that. But yeah, I would go Jonathan Taylor at the 101. And then, if any of the guys are available, I know Byron would say Ke'Shawn Vaughn might be available.
You won't have to take him at 106.
Yeah, you won't have to. I think you might be able to take him sometime in the second round. But I would see if I could get Clyde there. I feel like DeAndre Swift will go, jkdobbins will go. Somebody in your league will take Jerry Jeudy. Somebody will probably take CeeDee Lamb. You'll be there at 6. I think I'd be interested in seeing if Clyde Edwards-Helaire falls. And that's, God, you feel sick coming out of the draft.
I think you take a top 4, maybe a top 5 running back, or if somehow you get in on a top 3 receiver at that spot, you might also consider.
I don't think even top. I think Jeudy and CeeDee Lamb will be gone. I would be one of those two, or Clyde Edwards-Helaire, and go Jonathan Taylor first. I think is the best line of thinking. All right, guys. Again, if you're watching on YouTube, thanks for watching. Same with Periscope. You can find the RosterWatch Podcast on Apple Podcasts. Please give us a rating and a review over there. It means the world to us. You can also find all of our pro content with a pro membership at RosterWatch.com. So with that being said, love y'all. Thanks for watching. We will talk to you here in a few days. Peace.